Look around you, your phone, your shoes, your backpack, the road outside, the bus that drives past your house, even the food sitting in your kitchen. Believe it or not, all of them exist because of one thing: oil. But what if Earth never had it? Not that we ran out, not that it suddenly disappeared, but what if it simply never existed? Would we still have cars? Would airplanes ever be invented? Would plastic exist? Could modern civilization even happen? Or would humanity still be living in a completely different world? The answer is far more surprising than you might think. Before we imagine a world without oil, we first need to understand what oil actually is. Millions of years before humans existed, tiny marine plants and animals lived in ancient oceans. When they died, their remains sank to the bottom. Layer after layer of mud buried them. Over millions of years, heat and pressure transformed those remains into crude oil. In other words, oil isn't made overnight. It's the result of hundreds of millions of years of Earth's history. Without those conditions, there would be no oil fields, no drilling, no gasoline, nothing. Humans would never even know oil could exist. At first, life wouldn't seem very different. People would still discover fire, still invent wheels, still build cities, and civilizations like Egypt, Rome, China, and the Maya would probably still rise. Because none of them depended on oil. They relied on people, animals, wood, and wind. For thousands of years, human history would unfold almost exactly the same, but eventually, everything changes. The biggest turning point arrives during the Industrial Revolution, around the late 1700s. Steam engines transformed the world. Most people think oil powered this revolution, but it didn't. Coal did. Coal-fueled factories, coal-powered trains, coal drove enormous steam engines that produced goods faster than ever before. So, without oil, the Industrial Revolution would still happen. Factories would still grow, railroad would still spread across countries, and cities would still become larger. But then, history will take a completely different path. In our world, oil changed transportation forever. Gasoline contains an incredible amount of energy in a relatively small amount of fuel. That's one reason cars became practical. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, petroleum fuels have one of the highest energy densities among widely used transportation fuels, making them especially useful for cars, trucks, ships, and airplanes. Without oil, gasoline won't exist, diesel won't exist, jet fuel won't exist, and the world's first automobiles probably never become popular. Inventors would certainly try other ideas. Steam-powered cars already existed in the 1800s. Electric cars also existed surprisingly early. But they had one major problem: batteries. They were heavy, expensive, and couldn't travel very far. Gasoline eventually won because it was cheaper, more powerful, and easier to refuel. So without oil, that advantage disappears. Instead of millions of highways, the world might invest much more heavily in electric railways, streetcars, subways, and trains. Cities will become denser, people live closer to work, walking becomes normal again, and owning a personal car might be as rare as owning a private helicopter today. Then comes another surprise: airplanes. Modern aircraft don't simply use fuel, they depend on jet fuel, a fuel refined from crude oil. So without it, flying becomes one of humanity's greatest engineering challenges. Could airplanes still exist? Maybe, but they would almost certainly look very different. Scientists might focus on hydrogen, advanced batteries, or entirely new technologies we've never discovered, because oil was available first. International travel becomes slower, vacations across the world become rare, shipping goods between continents takes longer, and the planet suddenly feels much bigger. But transportation isn't where most people would notice the biggest difference. It's inside their own homes. Take a look around your room, your keyboard, your mouse, your headphones, your TV remote, your phone case, your toothbrush, the buttons on your clothes, the soles of your shoes. Most of these contain plastics made from petroleum. So, without oil, plastic as we know will never exist. Instead, manufacturers turn to glass, wood, metal, paper, leather, natural rubber, and ceramics. Everything becomes heavier, more expensive, and in many cases, much easier to break. Imagine carrying a glass water bottle every day, or buying toys made entirely from carved wood. Modern life wouldn't just feel older, it would look older too. And this is only the beginning, because one of the biggest changes has nothing to do with transportation or plastic. It has to do with something every single person needs: food. When people imagine farming, they usually picture tractors, but oil affects agriculture in far more ways than that. Modern farms rely on diesel-powered machines to plant crops, harvest fields, and transport food across thousands of miles. But that's only part of the story. Many modern fertilizers and pesticides are produced using fossil fuels as both an energy source and, in some cases, a chemical feedstock. According to the International Energy Agency, modern agriculture depends heavily on fossil fuels throughout the entire food supply chain. So without oil, growing food becomes slower, more expensive, and much less efficient. Farmers would also need more workers, more animals, and far more land to produce the same amount of food. Also, the Green Revolution, which dramatically increased crop production during the 20th century, might never happen. That means Earth couldn't support as many people. Instead of over 8 billion humans, the world's population could be dramatically smaller, not because people suddenly disappeared, but because feeding billions of people would be much harder. Then there's medicine. Most people think medicine is simply chemicals mixed together. But modern hospitals depend on oil in ways most of us never notice. Disposable syringes, IV bags, blood bags, medical tubing, protective gloves, face shields, sterile packaging, even many laboratory tools are made from petroleum-based plastics. Without those cheap plastics, hospitals would rely much more on glass, metal, and reusable equipment. That sounds simple, but reusable equipment must be cleaned, sterilized, inspected, and reused safely every single time. Without them, healthcare becomes slower, more expensive, and in many situations, more dangerous. Medical science would still advance, but some breakthroughs could take decades longer. Now think about your house. Paint, insulation, electrical wiring, water pipes, carpets, furniture, foam window seals. Almost every modern home contains petroleum products. Even synthetic fabrics like polyester and nylon, both made from oil, would never exist. Your wardrobe would mostly consist of cotton, wool, leather, linen, or silk. Clothes would often cost more, and replacing them wouldn't be as easy as visiting the nearest store. People might own fewer outfits, but take much better care of them. Here's another surprise. Would computers still exist? Most people immediately answer no. But that's probably wrong. Computers don't run on oil, they run on electricity. Silicon is the material used to make computer chips, and that doesn't come from oil. Neither does copper or aluminum. So eventually computers could still be invented. The problem isn't the computer itself, it's everything around it. Many circuit boards use petroleum-derived materials. The insulation around wires often contains plastics, computer cases, keyboards, mice, and countless electronic components depend on petroleum-based products. Manufacturing becomes slower, more expensive, and much more difficult. The internet might still exist, but it could arrive decades later than it did in our world, and the technologies we have doesn't disappear. It simply develops at a much slower pace. And then there's one thing people rarely think about: roads. Most roads today are paved with asphalt, and asphalt is made from petroleum. So without oil, roads would still exist, but they'd mostly be made from stone, brick, gravel, or concrete. Some roads would last longer, others would be rougher, travel would become slower, vehicles would wear out faster, even something as ordinary as driving to school could feel completely different. So, would a world without oil be better? Not necessarily. Cleaner air in some places? Maybe. Fewer plastic bottles floating in the ocean? Probably. But life would also be harder. Travel would take longer. Many everyday products would cost more. Medical care could be less advanced, food would be more expensive, and the world might never become as connected as it is today.